Hi guys, welcome back to another e-learning video. This video will be a review of what we've done so far. I'll go over squaring numbers, square rooting numbers, cubing numbers, and cube rooting numbers. I'm going to start with squaring numbers. So I have 4 squared. I'm going to see 4 2 times. So 4 and 4 again. A little better equal sign here. A little neater. Okay, so I have 4 2 times. 4 times 4. That's 16. Next one, 5 2 times, because it's 5 squared, so 5 times 5 is 25. Another example, it's 6 2 times, it's 6 squared, so that's 36. And then what if it's a decimal? Well, let's go ahead and try that. It's going to be the whole number here. Don't like break it apart, make it 6 and then 0.5 or anything. It's 6.5, and you're going to write it 2 times. Okay, so this is always consistent. It's 4 2 times, 5 2 times, 6 2 times, 6.5 2 times. Whatever the bigger number is, you write the whole thing and you write it 2 times. And then the multiplication is something that you can do in your head for the easier ones. And if it's a decimal one, I recommend you go ahead and use a calculator to find the answer. So let's use square roots. So squaring is taking a number times itself. It's taking this number 2 times. So 4 squared is 4 times 4. It's that number 2 times. So 4 times 4 is 16. Square rooting is starting with the answer and trying to work backwards and think about, okay, what number times the same thing would have made it to be a 16? So let's try that out. Let's see. 1 times 1 is 1. 2 times 2 is 4. 3 times 3 is 9. 4 times 4 is 16. So if you work like that, you can figure out that 4 times 4 is the one that makes 16. It's the only number times the exact same thing to make 16 when you're trying it out. So that means that the square root of 16 is 4. They'll talk about this in your other math class. Technically, you can also say that negative 4 is an answer, because if you do negative 4 times negative 4, you also get 16. So any answer we get here, we can also say the negative version. But what we're looking for is we're looking for some number times the same thing to make 25. Because 25 is the answer. And you try it out. And you try out 1 times 1, 2 times 2, 3 times 3, 4 times 4, 5 times 5, until you finally get the one you want. 5 times 5 is the one that does it, because 5 times 5 makes 25. So the square root of 25 is 5, because 5 times 5 makes 25. And like I said before, you can also say the negative version is an answer as well. Typically, people write the positive version as their answer, but both are true, because if I do 5 times 5, I get 25. If I do negative 5 times negative 5, I get 25. Let's try another one. This 36 is our answer, and we need something times the same thing. For a square root, you need something times the same thing to make this number. And that happens to be 6 times 6 will do that. So 6 is an answer, and negative 6 is an answer. So if you try it out, 6 times 6 is 36, and negative 6 times negative 6 is 36. So those are our answers here. And it's just because the same number times the same number makes the part that you want. So you want the number underneath the little radical sign, underneath this square root sign here. So this 16 has to be the answer, and you're looking for some number times the same thing to make that 16. But what happens if it's a 20? Here's where it gets a little bit harder, and you're going to need a calculator. So we want some number times the same thing to make 20. Well, if you try all the regular numbers, you try 2 times 2, 3 times 3, 4 times 4, 5 times 5, you're trying all of them, and you're not getting 20. You're trying it out, and you're like, oh, 4 times 4 is 16, 5 times 5 is 25. I went right past 20. I don't know what to do. You go ahead and type this in a calculator, and it's going to show you that these numbers here are going to be a decimal. So these two numbers, they're going to be the exact same number. Just like here, these are the same numbers twice to make the right answer. Like the only way square root of 25 can be written as an answer is 5 or a negative 5. So square root of 25 is 5 because 5 times 5 makes 25. And negative 5 times negative 5 makes 25. So this number and this number follow the same rules. It's going to be the same number, but they're both going to be a decimal. And that's just a total type it in the calculator, see what you get thing. Okay, the other thing we're going to talk about are the cube and cube root problems. So let's go over those real quick. So squaring a number means multiplying it by the same number twice. Square rooting means, okay, what number times the same thing would have given me that? Cubing is similar to squaring, but cubing means that you're going to take this number 3 times. So 4 squared was 4 times 4. So you notice that it was 4 2 times. 4 squared was 4 2 times. This is 4 cubed. It's 4 3 times. So 4, 4, 4. You're probably going to type it in a calculator, and that's 64. Okay, let's do 5 3 times. Let's do 5 cubed. 5 times 5 times 5. You type that in a calculator probably. That's 125. 6 3 times. 6 cubed. This little exponent is what tells you how many times you're going to see that number. So 6 3 times. 6 times 6 times 6. And you figure it out. Okay, what is that? And again, the calculators are on here on your computer. You can just type it in real easy. 216. Okay. That's it. So now what happens if, like earlier, we had 6.5 squared, and that was 6.5. Let me erase that. That was 6.5 times 6.5. So 4 squared was 4 times 4. 4 cubed is 4 times 4 times 4. 4 2 times. 4 3 times. This is 6.5 2 times. It's 6.5 squared, which means 6.5 2 times. That's what I showed there. This is 6.5 3 times. And that's something you're probably going to type in the calculator. $274.65. Okay, that's a tough one. There's pretty much no student I know that wants to do that in their head. So that's what I would do. I would type it in the calculator, see what you get. It's 6.5 3 times. 6.5 cubed is 6.5 3 times. Now let's do the reverse of that. Let's start with the answer and try to figure out what number would have given you 64. So when you did a square root, let's say you had 16. It was some number times the same thing to make 16. Squaring is dealing with something twice. So when you square a number, it's that number times itself. When you square root a number, it's twice again. Hey, what number times itself makes 16? And you know that that's 4. You know that 4 times 4 makes 16. Okay? And then we talked about, hey, there's also a negative answer. If I can make this a little neater for you. There's also the negative answer. That's a possibility. So 4 times 4 makes 16. So I knew that the square root of 16 is 4 because 4 times 4 makes 16. And negative 4 times negative 4 makes 16. What about cube roots? Well, the little 3 tells you that it's going to be something 3 times. For square roots, you kind of just have to know that it's supposed to be twice. For cube roots, you have a little 3 here that actually tells you. So you're going to have the same number 3 times that makes 64. And you're probably going to just want to check a calculator again. Try stuff out. 1 times 1 times 1, that's 1. 2 times 2 times 2, 8. 3 times 3 times 3, 27. 4 times 4 times 4, 64. Okay, I got it. 4 times 4 times 4 is the one that works. So 4 times 4 times 4 is the one that makes that work. If I can make this a little neater. Okay, 4. So the cube root of 64 is 4 because 4 times 4 times 4 makes 64. It's the same number 3 times and it makes 64. Let's follow those rules again. Some number 3 times, that makes 25. And I happen to know, because it's the next one, 4 times 4 times 4 was 64. You try that next one, 5 times 5 times 5. That is 125. So I know that 5 is my answer. So the cube root of 125 is 5. Let's try it again. Cube root of 216, so something times something times something to make 216. And you're just going to try stuff out again. So you're just trying stuff out. And this is something we've done earlier, just to remind you. 6 times 6 times 6 is the one that makes 216. Eventually, you're going to start to get these memorized, and you'll just know the answer. So the cube root of 216 is 6 times 6 times 6, because 6 3 times is what makes 216. It follows the rules. The cube root thing means that you have to see the same number 3 times that makes this answer. So 6 times 6 times 6 follows those rules, it gets 216. So it equals 6. So the cube root of 216 is 6. Okay, so you followed these ones. You're like, oh, okay, 4 times 4 times 4 makes 64. So that followed it. That worked. That's perfect. So 4 is my answer. 5 times 5 times 5 makes 125. That's 5. 6 times 6 times 6 makes 216. So the answer is 6. But what happens if you try all these things out and nothing works? Like you try 1 times 1 times 1, 2 times 2 times 2, 3 times 3 times 3, 4 times 4 times 4, 5 times 5 times 5, 6 times 6 times 6, and nothing is working. You're not hitting it. And you think, wait a minute, 4 times 4 times 4 was 64. 5 times 5 times 5 was 125. I skipped right past 120 because I went from 64 to 125 when I did all the 4s and all the 5s. That means that your answer is going to be a decimal. You're going to have a decimal and then the same thing and the same thing. Just like here, it's going to be the same 3 numbers, but it's always going to be a decimal here because it skipped right over the 2 options of 4 and 5. So it's in between 4 and 5. It's going to be a decimal each time. This is a total type it in the calculator and see what you get thing, because you can't really figure this out by trying out the multiplications. You'd be trying it all day if you tried 4.1 times 4.1 times 4.1. I don't want you to do that. I want you to type it in the calculator, cube root of 120, and find out what it is. So that is an overview of how to square numbers, cube numbers, square root numbers, and cube root numbers.